Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Stranger Things Season 3. This is a full spoilers review of Season 3 of Stranger Things, so if you haven't seen all of Stranger Things Season 3 all the way up to the end, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, the first thing I gotta say is Stranger Things, I call it Season 3, but really officially they call it Stranger Things 3. They don't go as far as to say Part 3, but that's kind of implied. Like, it's Stranger Things 2, Stranger Things 3, and apparently Westworld's doing that now because they calling their season coming up Westworld 3 rather than Season 3, so that might become the new trend because streaming shows and premium cable shows are evolving beyond what TV shows used to be, so they might change the lingo a bit. However, as far as Stranger Things goes, I actually do think that labeling is really apt because this doesn't really feel like a season 3 of a TV show. It does feel like the second sequel to a movie. Like, this is the first season was the first movie, and the second season was the sequel, and this is the next sequel. So this is part 3 of a series. And it really feels that way. And this show is modeled off of like old 80s horror films and stuff like that. And this does feel like a part 3 of a horror film. And such that most of, once you get into part 3, 4, whatever, they just start repeating the same things over and over again. And that's what I feel like this season did. I felt like this season, like, it had, don't get me wrong, there's things I liked about it. But at its core, if you just shave down the plot of the season, what happens in the season to its bare minimum, it's the exact same thing that happens in Season 2 and Season 1. Now, as I said, I still like the season. I think there was enough interesting, like the characters were interesting enough to keep it fresh. They added new elements to that core plot that they're repeating to keep it fresh and to keep me interested. But overall, I am getting a bit tired of the same plot, and I'm particularly thinking as far as Stranger Things 4 goes, that I'm going to be even less interested in it. So that's why it feels like a horror franchise from like the 80s or 90s, where the longer it goes, the less interesting it becomes, and it's just repeating the same beats over and over again to try to rank, get the money or get more people watching it, rather than like a TV show that actually has an ongoing story. Because many people noticed after they watched the first season that the story felt self-contained, so they thought it would be a one-season thing. But no, we're going to do a second one, which, if you saw my review for Stranger Things 2, or Stranger Things Season 2, I actually like that better than Season 1. Because I wasn't as big on Season 1 as a lot of people were. I didn't think it was the best thing since sliced bread. I had a lot of issues with it. And I thought Season 2 slightly improved on that. Now, Season 3, I would say, is probably my least favorite of the 3 seasons. I definitely like Season 2 better. As I said, I think that did a lot better. Now, Season 1, I don't remember as well, so it's hard for me to compare Season 3 to Season 1. But by the simple fact that Season 3 is just repeating what Season 1 did, I think that by default makes Season 1 better. So I'm going to have to say that this is my least favorite season of the 3. Now, does that mean I didn't like it? No. I mean, as I said, I did like it, but it had a really rough start. Now, I think some people complained about the start of Season 2, but I was fine with it. The start of Season 3, I had an issue with. Like, after the first 2 episodes, like, I had to force myself to keep watching the season. I'm like, this is actively bad. Like, I don't like this. Now, there were some elements within those first 2 episodes I liked, but overall, there was more I didn't like and more that was bothering me than more that I did like. For example, I'll talk about some of the things I did like. Is I like the relationship between Mike and Eleven. I thought that was a really interesting way to have those characters evolve as they're getting older. It's very natural. And it was interesting that there were lovebirds who couldn't be separated, and that was really irritating Harper. And he intervened, and then it created a rift between Mike and 11, and then Max stepped in, and I actually like how they have Max and 11 become close friends, because I think some people might have been complaining in season 2 that the only two girls in the group were at odds and jealous of each other. So to me, it made a lot more sense to have them be friends, and plus for 11 to get more female companionship rather than being around a bunch of boys all the time made sense for her character development. So that was actually really cool to see. So I liked some of the scenes at the mall and stuff. But what did bother me about that storyline was how obtuse it's really contrived cliche TV show 80s sitcom style writing, when all Mike had to do from the very beginning, instead of making up lies about his grandmother and be like, look, Harper came to me and told me not to see you anymore, and he's acting crazy. And Elle would have been mad at him instead of Mike, which is how it should be. But no, he kept. In fact, by the time he tells her this, is way too late. Even at the mall, he had a chance to tell her. I don't think he tells her until episode 4 or 5 or something. And by then, it's way too late, and she doesn't care. And there's no reason why he wouldn't tell her. It's a cliche story. It's because they wanted the stupid storyline to happen. Now, I didn't really like the part where Elle went up to him and was like, I'm dumping your ass. That's great. 11 has always been my favorite aspect of the show, and I think they really do a good job developing her character this season. But I will say, I didn't like how they abandoned the storyline with her sister from season 2. And it pisses me off when I ever hear people complaining about that episode. I went on record, I love that episode. I had no issue with it. I totally disagree with all the hate that episode got, and I'm a bit irritated that the showrunners gave in to all those haters. Why do we spend an episode with your sister? That was a good episode. I would have liked to see that followed up on, but whatever. I gotta accept the majority role in this case, I suppose. But, so 11 is probably one of the things that I like most about the season. But the rest of the first 2 episodes, I didn't like the whole thing with Dustin and his girlfriend. Is she real or she isn't? I didn't care about that. And the whole thing of seeing Steve working at the ice cream shop with Robin, how Robin's and being very adversarial towards him. I didn't really care for that. But what was worse to me was Billy's storyline, which it was so 80s-ish, and I know that's the point of the show, but to me this is 80s-ish in a bad way, where season 1 and 2, particularly 2, were mostly 80s-ish in a good way. But here we had a thing where all the middle-aged women were sitting by the pool, and they're like, oh, she's coming down, oh, here he comes. And when Billy comes sliding down, slow-mo to cool music, I was like, that's so cheesy. That is so dumb. I really didn't care for what they did with Billy this season at all. I think it was really contrived, but I'll get into that a bit more later on. But what's probably the worst, though, was Nancy, her storyline, and Nancy and Jonathan's storyline, where they're interned reporters, and it's just, I know it was trying to portray how tough it was for women in the workplace in the 80s, and I think that's just cheesy, though. It seems really, again, it's like a trope to 80s movies, which again I know is the point, but now they're taking on bad tropes to it, and their whole storyline throughout the entire season didn't work for me, Nancy and Jonathan. I never was that invested in it, even when it got towards the end, when they start getting more involved in the main plot. The one thing I will say is I did like the hospital scene. I thought that was one of the best scenes of the season. It was super intense, where Nancy and Jonathan were running from the people, and because the receptionist insisted on only 2 people at a time, 11 who could have helped was just sitting in the waiting room. That had a nice string of tension to it, and eventually they Will has the hair in the back of his neck stand up, so they realize something's wrong, so they charge margin in there. Anyway, like, that was great. And I did like how, what they did with Will and how he wasn't, didn't get captured, wasn't the victim this season. I did like that. That was at least a trope that they stopped, because if they continued that, it would be like, all right, come on, how much can you do to this poor kid? But again, in the first 2 episodes, or first 3 episodes, I should say, with the whole thing about him like wanting to do the Dungeons and Dragons, where friends are just concerned about girls and all that, like that stretched on, got really tiresome. As I said, the whole aspect of the breakup was a bit contrived in the first place, which kind of irritated me. So the season actually didn't really kick in to me till like episode 5, maybe 4. It started to get good, but the first 3 or 4 episodes, I wasn't really that invested in the season. And when it did kick in, there were some good moments, and it did get good, as I just mentioned, the moment in the hospital. But it never like got amazingly great for me, and I never it never got good enough to offset how bad the first couple episodes was. And now getting back to Billy, like, I thought the big ending they had with him, where, Eleven goes in his mind, sees memories of his mother, and at the very end, like, she uses those memories to bring him back to himself. Like, that felt really contrived to me. Like, I didn't really understand how that worked, and why she's seeing the memories of his mother, and why just mentioning those would make him want to sacrifice his life to save her. Like, I didn't buy any of that. Like, I knew they were building towards a Billy redemption, and him, like, trying to break free of the control of the Mind Flayer. But I thought the way they did it was lacking and lackluster, and I didn't really buy it. And plus, like, it's so contrived, because the writers even talked about this themselves, as they like to take villain characters and turn them good, like they did with Steve in the first season. Like, he was a bit an asshole, but now he's like, everyone likes him. And in the last season, they talked about how Billy was the villain character, so obviously they had to try to turn him good. And I kind of saw that one coming. And I never really liked the character of Billy at all. And this season did not make me like him anymore. It's just, I think the whole thing was contrived and misused, and I didn't really care for it. I didn't like how they kept Dustin separate from the main group of kids, like, the entire season. He only met up towards the end, and they hugged. They're like, oh, where have you been? You should have been here. And then they separated again. Like, that felt like a bit contrived too. Like, they had to stick to the format of the first 2 seasons, the first season in particular, where everyone split up in different groups throughout most of the season, and then they converge towards the end, which made sense for the first season. It seems a bit more forced in this season, in my opinion. Now, I also didn't care for Erica. Like, she was a really annoying character, and I think having her involved and continuing to be involved in the main story throughout was not a good choice. It was to the detriment of the show, and I don't think it particularly worked. And I didn't like the Russians. I thought the whole involvement, again, this is callback to some of the cheesiness of the 80s movies and stuff, but to the worst aspects of 80s movies, how the Russians always had to be the bad guys. And look, how realistic is that there's a whole compound, like, of military Russians in Indiana, underground in Indiana, in America? Like, that's ridiculous. It is beyond ridiculous. Like, beings from some parallel dimension coming to our dimension and killing people, I can buy that. Russians being underground combat, that's just cheesy. It's just how they're like, they're such like two-dimensional villains. Now, you could argue there's that Alexei character who is a bit more dynamic because he was a scientist and he actually, you could relate with him. And I did like his character, but I don't think that offset. That didn't excuse like how two-dimensional the other Russian characters were. And that one, big evil bad guy Russian, like they kept playing. It was so contrived how they forced him to be like the Terminator. Like, even Carl Elus, the mayor's, his character at one point when Hopper was trying to figure out who that guy was, he was like, oh, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger. and they're like calling out their own things, how they're trying to make that character so much like the Terminator. It was just ridiculous. And by the way, Arnold Schwarzenegger was not that well known of a name in 1985. I mean, people were familiar with movies and going to see movies a lot, know a lot about movies. They would know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is. But the common Joe, who only knew about the big superstars, Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't a big superstar at that stage. Terminator didn't become a huge hit until later years. But anyway, and I think there's the Conan movies. But again, like people who are cinephiles would know who he is, but the average Joe would not. But anyway, I'm getting off on the rant here. But anyway, yeah, so the whole Russian thing I thought was a bit of a wash. Although I liked some of the scenes with Steve and Robin and how when they were trapped on the ground and being tortured by the Russians. And when they gave them the drugs and they got like stoned for the rest of the time. Like, I actually thought that was effective humor. I did really like that. And I got mixed feelings about them subverting the trope of Robin and Steve getting together because they revealed that she was a lesbian and Steve was okay with this, which I thought spoke well of this character and really good storytelling, and it was good that they subverted the trope because you assume that they're putting these two characters together. But on the other hand, I kind of wanted them to get together because it would be good development for Steve's character to go from being the hot guy who only gets the hot chicks and he's like the jock or whatever, and he ends up going with a quote unquote nerdy girl. So I would have actually liked that, but like I would have been more okay with that than some of the other romances that they push. It's funny they decided to subvert the trope in the one place I think they shouldn't have, but that's just my opinion. But it's also funny because Dustin was pushing that. Oh, you guys love each other. Why don't you just make out already? And I guess the show is saying that Dustin doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Like that other guy, the reporter guy that they brought back from season 2, like whenever he says it, like he said it about Nancy and Jonathan in season 2, and then he says it about Hopper and what's her face, Winona Ryder, Joyce, and they say it about Hopper and Joyce in this season. So he's always right. So that reporter dude is always right, but Dustin doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So I think that's what the show is trying to tell us. Now, as far as that reporter dude goes, he only had a small part in season 2, and they brought him back much more. Now, I like this character. I point out in season 2 that he was one of my favorite characters of season 2. So I like that they brought him back, but he was getting kind of annoying after a while. I think they did overdo him a bit, but I did overall like his involvement. And I thought the scenes, like when they're trapped in the mall towards the end of the show, those were effectively intense. I like how Eleven was like fighting off the monsters, but then she lost her powers, and so they had to find other ways. Like I think they used the MacGuffin of the fireworks very well, where they introduced it as a Chekhov's gun situation where it's like, and Max is like, oh, we don't need fireworks, Elle can just take care of it. It's like, yeah, but Elle might need some backup, and of course setting up for when she loses her powers. Good thing he brought those fireworks along. And I like how Max was like, thought it was the dumbest idea, but it turned out not to be such a dumb idea. So I like that they're actually showing Lucas is not always a moron, because a lot of times they play it off like he has the dumbest ideas, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but here he actually was right, and it was a good idea to bring the fireworks along. So those scenes were very effective. It was a bit hard, a bit tropey that Steve and Robin showed up at the exact moment they needed to shove Billy's car aside to stop him from killing them. But here's the other thing I will say. I like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers-esque storyline where the Mind Flayer was like taking over the bodies of a lot of people in the town. And I thought they were going to go somewhere with this. I thought they were going to end up like having like sort of infiltrating the town and like taking over most of the people of the town, where the town was completely overrun by these Mind Flayer zombies. But instead, they just had all the zombies, Mind Flayer controlled zombies, just run up and like turn into Slug in order to create an ultra big Mind Flayer, which I thought was a misuse of that, particularly the character of Heather, because they spent so much time with her and then it seemed to go nowhere, in my opinion. Like, I wasn't that satisfied with the conclusion. Why the hell did they keep Billy? Like, they turned all the other mind control people into slush so it could have a huge thing, yet they kept Billy around for some odd reason. He's the main character, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I thought that was a bit stupid. And the ending where Joyce has to kill Hopper, like, that was really effective too. Like, I really thought that was good, even though it had to do with it. Hopper was only there because he had to kill the Terminator. But yeah, that was a really strong ending, but he's obviously not dead. I mean, I don't like. I think it's really cheesy how they bring it up. They have that as a cliffhanger, sort of. They had that ending credit scenes, which clearly implies, as the Russian guys say, "Oh, not the American." Like, of course it's Hopper. Everyone's saying that. Of course it's Hopper. In fact, when I was watching that scene, I had assumed that they would actually show Hopper in the jail cell. And I actually wanted them to, and I was a bit pissed off. Oh no, they have to go. Oh, the cliffhanger. Who's the American? Oh, it's a Hopper. And if it's not Hopper, then I'm actually going to be pissed. It's obviously him. But I gotta tell you, like, I do like this season overall, but I am not really looking forward to season 4. I do not think, if they keep going this way, if just keep repeating the same thing over and over again, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and I don't know if season 4 is going to cut the mustard, as they say. I don't know if it's actually going to work out. But anyway, I'll just go ahead and give my rating for Stranger Things 3 out of 10, and it's a 7. Very good. As much crap as I talked about this season, I did enjoy it enough. Like, especially the last 4 episodes did have me engaged enough. I like the characters. The characters shine throughout, even the first couple episodes, which I didn't like very much. Some of the characters, like, as I said, Mike and Eleven's relationship and their journey that they take through the whole season, and Eleven's relationship with Hopper, mainly Eleven. Like, I think she's definitely the strongest character. Every time she was on the screen, I was really engaged. And really, now some of the side plots they had didn't work as well, like the whole Nancy and Jonathan. That side plot just fell really flat the entire season. But the side plot with Steve and Robin and Dustin actually did work at times and was also quite engaging. So there were some of the side plots did work, and some of the characters they brought back, like the reporter dude and the side story they had with the Russian scientist, like that all worked. So it did get a lot stronger towards the end of the season, but I do think it had a lot of elements that, first of all, that weak start to the season really hurt it, and they had elements that kind of were a bit hard to buy and a bit cheesy throughout the entire season. So to me, that keeps it from being a great season, but it's still a good one, still enjoyable. Anyway, that is it for my review of Stranger Things 3. Be sure to check out my channel as I review many other shows like Star Trek, The Expanse, Lost, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.